But right now, joining us from SB Nation's State of the U is my buddy, of course, Cam Underwood, covering the Miami Hurricanes. Cam, it's been a while, buddy. How's it going?
Mike, what's going on, my friend? I've been checking out the Mike and Jody Hate Miami podcast. It's still going strong over there with you guys. But, a little different now today, video form.
Yeah. Filling in for Mark here, let's see what I can do. Miami, another really successful class under Mark Richt. We knew coming into the Mark Richt era, he was going to recruit extremely well. Obviously, the Hurricanes turned the corner on the field this year, starting out undefeated, playing as well as they did. Stumbled a bit down the stretch. You and I talked about this numerous times, the quarterback position with Malik Rozier and how his ceiling was a bit limited as far as his potential as a downfield passer, perhaps providing a hindrance for the Hurricanes throughout the year. First of all, before we get into this class, which was a top 10 class in the country and one of the top classes in the ACC, let's talk a little bit about the Hurricanes and how they're going to look at their quarterback position moving forward. They, of course, have Malik Rozier. Evan Sheriffs is now out of the fold, moving on as grad transfer, and they still have N'Kosi Perry. How do you view the quarterback position moving forward, and how should Miami fans take a look at that outlook here moving forward into 2018?
Yeah, I think that Malik Rozier hit the absolute peak of his performance potential this past season. I think that there should be an upgrade made at that position. You have N'Kosi Perry, who's on campus. You also have Jaron Williams, who is this year's signee, early enrollee, who's on campus. And then obviously you have Malik Rozier coming back. And then a couple walk-ons, I think. Cade Weldon, who's also a scholarship quarterback, who's a redshirt freshman as well. Mark Richt today at his press conference on National Signing Day said that Malik Rozier is the starting quarterback for this team. And I agree that is correct on today, February the 7th of 2018. I don't think that that's going to be the same moving forward. So if you're a Miami fan, I think that you have to look at one of the guys being N'Kosi Perry or Jaron Williams stepping up and taking that job, because those are the guys who have a higher ceiling for potential. They have more athletic ability. Those are Miami caliber quarterbacks. And I appreciate what Malik Rozier did in 2017, but that's about the best we're going to get from him, I think. So, yeah, if you're a Miami fan, really you're going to look for a new player at that position moving forward into the next season.
Yeah, and Miami, of course, added four-star quarterback Jaron Williams today. What do you think the outlook on him is? Is he a guy that's going to fill in as a depth piece? Do you think he has an opportunity to step in and push for a starting quarterback job? Maybe not in 2018, but moving forward. Of course, like you mentioned, you guys do have N'Kosi Perry. He was highly touted himself, and he should push for playing time, like you mentioned. But what's the outlook on Jaron Williams here as you guys bring in your 2018 recruiting class?
I think, well, first of all, Jaron Williams signed in December on the early signing period, and he's already enrolled and on campus. And I think we're on day 2 of mat drills for the team. So he's fully integrated to the program already. I think between Kosi and Jaron, those guys are going to push for playing time this year in 2018. Jaron Williams is not as physical as N'Kosi Perry, i.e. his physical traits are not as overwhelming. I think N'Kosi Perry is taller. He has a stronger arm than does Jaron Williams. Jaron Williams is more polished. And then you'll see that in a lot of Georgia high school quarterbacks. So Jaron Williams, I think, is going to insert himself into the quarterback competition. He's going to push for playing time. And he may win that job this year. I'm not going to sit here right now today on February 7th and quarterback and say who's going to win the quarterback competition. But Jaron Williams is a player who can play here, and he's going to push for playing time this year and also into the future. So that's a guy you want in your quarterback room.
Absolutely, and I think he's definitely a guy as a depth piece at the very least to provide Miami fans with some comfort moving forward. Like you mentioned, Malik Rozier definitely hit his ceiling this year, but I think the outlook overall on Miami is positive everywhere else. And I think at quarterback position now, a lot of Hurricanes fans can definitely feel good about where the quarterback position's at. But let's talk about this class. Of course, we had the early signing period back in December, and now we're in a position here moving into February, National Signing Day. 14 4-stars, according to a 247 Sports composite for Miami. That's good for the 8th-ranked class nationally and the 2nd-best class in the ACC. When you look at this class top to bottom, Cam, what are a couple of things that Miami fans should be cognizant of? And, really everybody who, pays attention to at least ACC football should be cognizant of with this Hurricanes recruiting class. And what should people get excited about?
The skill players are stacked. I mean, this skill class on offense is loaded. 5-star running back Lorenzo Lingard, who's a top 15, 20 player in America. Cameron Davis from Carroll City, 4-star recruit. Realist George from Georgia, the #1 fullback. You got Mark Pope, Brian Hightower. You got Marquez Izzard and D. Wiggins at wide receiver. That's a dynamic group of 4. Then you get Brevin Jordan, the best tight end in this class, and Will Mallory, who is a Michigan legacy from Jacksonville, and he signs, and he's the number, I want to say, like 5 or 6 tight end. So you get 2 top 6 tight ends, you get 4 very talented wide receivers, you get 2 top-end running backs, the best fullback in America, and the previously mentioned Jaron Williams, and 3 offensive linemen, including 2 All-Americans. Yo, that offensive class is loaded. So that's the thing that you should know about. I'm sorry. Well, there's people out there being crazy and banging on stuff outside my apartment. I know what's going on. Sorry about that.
They're excited about this class one.
Yeah, man. You know, again, don't play about that. So, outside of those guys, the offensive side is really stacked. The defensive secondary, there are 5 guys who are in that group. Didn't get all the top end guys that Miami was chasing after, and we can and we'll probably will talk about that. And we wrote about that on the website. So if we don't get time to talk about that, be sure you go over to stateoftheu.com and check out all that content. But, 5 guys there, 1 true cornerback in DJ Ivy, Gilbert Frierson from Coral Gables High School could play corner or that field free safety. I think he's like an All-American at free safety, but they're going to try him at cornerback first. But with the dearth of cornerbacks on the roster, that makes sense. And then, you get a couple defensive tackles, and you need it that bad in this class. Nessa Silvera is huge, rated the nastiest player in this recruiting class by 247 Sports. Also, Jordan Miller, who's huge at 6'4", 330 pounds, I should say. And he probably would have been a 4-star recruit, except for he went to a very small school in the middle of nowhere for 3 years and didn't do any camps or combines. So he kind of flew under the radar until his senior year when he transferred to a bigger school. So, there's players to like on all the position groups, basically. We took 1 linebacker in this class, really looking to 2019 for more linebackers. And we got a kicker who's the 2nd best kicker in America and routinely hits 60-yard field goals. So, that's pretty decent. So really on all sides, offense, defense, special teams, Miami did get Miami caliber players, but there's still a little bit to be desired by missing on a couple guys down the stretch.
Absolutely. And, looking at the recruiting class, Cam, as well, there are 8 3-star recruits according to 247 Sports Composite. I'm curious how those 3-star guys that maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now, not the sexiest names in this recruiting class. Who's one guy who you think is going to stand out and make a difference here in the next 4 years? If you had to project one, even if it's 1 or 2 guys from this recruiting class that nobody's really talking about, who do you think can make the most impact?
I already said D. Wiggins, the wide receiver. He's 6'3", 175 pounds. He's a really talented guy, except for 2 things. One, he went to Miami Southridge, and the other wide receiver there was Mark Pope, who was a borderline 5-star, in the conversation for the best wide receivers in America. So you're going to take a backseat to that, or to him. And Miami Southridge's quarterback play has been notoriously atrocious for years. So that really didn't allow Wiggins or Pope to really showcase their talents. So I think that Wiggins probably is a guy who's going to overperform his recruiting ranking. And he committed to Miami so early that teams didn't offer him. So he only had like 7 or 8 scholarship offers, but his talent is that of a 20 or 25 offer guy. If he would have been uncommitted and maybe going through the process, maybe he went to a different school where he got featured catching the ball a little bit more. So that's a guy who I think can be a guy who plays above his rating. Also, well, I already said Jordan Miller, defensive tackle. That guy is good. He really is. He's 6'4", 330 pounds. And if he would have been at Sandalwood, that's an 8A school, that's a big school that routinely puts guys into college football, he would have been a 4-star rated recruit and maybe even a little bit further along his path of development. He went to Palatka, which I'm sure you've never heard of before, in the middle of nowhere, Florida, for 3 years and was kind of under the radar. So I think he's a guy. And then also Realist George, the fullback, is the '1 fullback in America. No, he's not necessarily going to be your Heisman Trophy caliber statistical production, but Miami does want to be physical in the run game. He's 6'2", 245 pounds. He's, he looks older than he is. There was a funny story from his official visit. A Miami staffer came up to him on the sidelines and thought that Realist George was the parent of a recruit and told him he had to leave the recruit area. And he's like, no, like I'm a high school kid. I'm 18. And they're like, no, because he looks 35. But, you know, you need those kind of guys. So I think those are three-star guys who really can overperform their rating. And hopefully they will because, you know, they play positions of need. And well, Wiggins isn't really needed, but he's very talented. So I think he can be a contributor down the line. Jordan Miller, obviously, you need nose guards, one-tech tackles there. And then Realist George adding that physicality to the run game. Hopefully those guys are able to really step up and be contributors for Miami.
Yeah, and as you know, Cam, this is never just a one-year thing with recruiting. It's always, what are these players going to do for you year over year? And Miami, coming off a 10-win season, very successful year for them. Of course, had the 3 losses down the stretch, but starting the year undefeated, being right in the thick of things in college football playoff. The quarterback play, I guess, was the chief hindrance, at least in my opinion, with Miami down the stretch. But as far as the Hurricanes are concerned moving forward, obviously this is a top 10 class and Mark Richt is going to continue to recruit well. But what's the one thing you have to see from Miami other than quarterback play at this point to see them compete with a team like Clemson? Because at this point, the Hurricanes are definitely leading the arms race in the ACC Coastal Division, that's for sure. And everybody in the ACC right now is chasing the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah, you know, we need depth and talent just across the board. You miss Kendrick Norton and RJ McIntosh leave early to the NFL draft, and then you have Anthony Moten also, who graduated from defensive tackle. You have DJ Johnson, who's a 4-star guy with the most scholarship offers in America in the last recruiting class. He transfers out and he goes back to the West Coast to Oregon. And now you only bring in Greg Russo, who is 6'6", 220 pounds, but he played safety most of the time in high school, but he's going to play defensive end at Miami. So there's going to be a transition there. You bring in Miller and Silvera at defensive tackle, which is good with both of those players, but not great. So I really want to see the thing that's going to push Miami to the forefront is closing on signing day, is having this USC or Ohio State or Georgia type closing, because Georgia, this year was ridiculous with the way that they closed, even beating Miami for a couple of guys down the stretch. You really, to take that next step, good cannot be good enough. And a top 5 or 7 class, which is what Miami has, is really good. And I'm excited about all of those guys. Yet and still, there are holes on this roster and in this recruiting class that could have been plugged or could have been improved. And that has to happen. So I don't know if that is adding a 10th coach who's an ace defensive recruiter, if it's something else with the swag and the visits, and I don't know what it has to be, but for me, it's really taking that next step, is getting more elite guys, getting more guys like a Mark Pope, like a Lorenzo Lingard, those everybody's All-Americans. You cannot keep losing those guys. And at the defensive back position in this class, Miami missed on Pat Surtain Jr. and Tyson Campbell from cornerback, and lost Josh Jobe to Alabama as well. That's 3 5-star caliber players. And you replace them directly with a 3-star from Miami Northwestern Senior High School, who is fast and he can probably impact the return game, but that's not a peer-level replacement. And until we get those kind of players year over year stacking chips, I think that's going to be the thing that holds Miami back.
And I got a question for you, Cam, in addition, and we'll close with this. Joey and I were talking about this on the Basketball Conference podcast. We were recapping Miami season, and we were talking about the defense, and we were talking about how solid the defense was in 2018 and how Manny Diaz is one guy who seemingly always flies under the radar for head coaching searches. It's always like, there are teams that are interested in him and schools that, may really like to have him, but he's really comfortable where he's at right now with Mark Richt. He's done such a great job as a defensive coordinator for Miami. I'm wondering, as a guy who follows the program religiously, what are your views on Manny Diaz's prospects as a Miami defensive coordinator moving forward? Obviously, he's done an excellent job. He's going to be there as long as he would like. But do you think there's a job out there that, really entices him? Are there a handful of jobs that he's been rumored to be interested in? And do you think that he's going to be with the Hurricanes for the long term, or do you think it's only a matter of time before he's poached by another program to potentially become their head coach?
I think that Diaz is very good. I like his second half adjustments. Sometimes the game plan can get a little off whack. If you're wondering what I'm talking about with that, look at the Clemson ACC championship game where we tried to take away the run, and they just said, cool, we're going to throw short passes and even a couple deep passes. But Kelly Bryant was nobody's ace passing quarterback, but we made him look very, very successful, and did that a couple other times throughout the season. So there's a lot to like. Obviously, with the aggression, with the tackles for loss, there's some to be desired with giving up some passing. I think there were 5 games this year where Miami opposing quarterbacks started 8 for 8 or better. So obviously, I think that needs to be improved. But Miami did have a young secondary this year, so that could be part and parcel with that. I think that Diaz is comfortable in Miami. He's a Miami native. His father used to be the mayor of Miami-Dade County. So, yeah, he is very comfortable here, but I think that eventually he is going to move on. I wrote in 2017, before the season, for all of our SB Nation sites, we have 5 predictions for 5 years of your program. And one of my predictions was that Manny Diaz would get a head coaching job and leave Miami for that job in 5 years' time. So we're 2 years into that, and I think that's still a couple years away. Some teams, I think, probably do remember just the colossal disaster that happened at Texas when he was there. So a couple more strong seasons at Miami would probably elevate him up to that level. But if he wants to be a head coach in the college football world, I think that that's going to happen for Manny Diaz relatively sooner than later.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's a heck of a coach. I think he's done a great job at Miami, and I agree with you. I do think it's only a matter of time. Cam, thanks for joining us tonight. Plug your site for us, for those of you who don't know where you're at and what you're up to.
Yeah, no problem. It was a pleasure to be here. Wish I had a little bit more good news, but hey, again, a top 7-ish class is not bad news for everybody watching. But yeah, I'm the managing editor at State of the U. It's stateoftheu.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thestateoftheu. Also on Twitter at twitter.com/thestateoftheu or at thestateoftheu on Twitter. We have a bunch of content going up. Actually, we have a game preview for today's basketball game. So we're transitioning there. We do baseball, we do recruiting, we do football. It's all free all the time, and it's all about the U. So be sure you check us out, stateoftheu.com, and all of our other social platforms.
And for those of you who have never looked at stateoftheu.com and you want any information on Miami football, that's the place to go. I try to tell people, Cam, you're a machine, buddy. You do an excellent job there. So got to definitely plug you while I'm on here, filling in for Mark here tonight. And of course, you're on here with Mark Rogers TV all the time. You're on my podcast, which I always appreciate. So thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, man. I appreciate the love, and thanks for having me on. So we'll talk to you guys soon. Be sure you check us out, stateoftheu.com. Have a good one.
For sure, Cam. Thank you.